Hi, this is Cora Stack here, Dr. Stack. I wanted to just congratulate a few members of the Senate in the United States. I hadn't ever heard of some of these senators until their YouTube posts or their YouTube videos on certain topics came onto my feed on YouTube. And the ones that came up that were very impressive were from I think a Republican called Senator Josh Hawley, who's been very advocating, very strongly against AI surveillance pricing, which I think is already happening in Ireland. We're not fully aware of it, but I think it's already, taken hold on the Irish market. But he really, and I think it's Senator Durbin, an excellent fellow from the Democratic side as well, was explaining, the outrageous caper of companies who are selling data. So anytime you tap or buy from Amazon or any they were calling even grocery stores or any, hotels, airlines, they're selling that data on, and then you get a personalized profile. And one person apparently allegedly had a profile of 62 pages, of his purchasing, online, and therefore they were able to use AI to create this personalized profile. And what was astonishing in the extreme was the fact that they were saying now that what could happen is that in your own grocery store or local shop, they'd have a digital, pricing system where you'd have, it would roll around when you come around. It's outrageous. It was outrageous, the rolling around digital pricing system, specialised for yourself to clean you out of every penny. So, I mean, this AI surveillance pricing is outrageous. It's an outrageous abuse of privacy, and not a mind scamming of ordinary people, to use their words. You could say it's fraud, allegedly, on customers. And I'm not sure the Irish people are fully aware of the extent of what's going on. And in fairness to Senator Hawley and Senator, I think it's Durbin, they had a great hearing about these injustices towards people, or these scams as they call them. And I think Senator Hawley was saying it was one of the greatest scams ever that was going to be put on the people. Now, I'm not sure what the solution was, but certainly there needs to be severe regulation of this kind of caper. And some of the posts were saying there that it should be banned. This kind of surveillance should be banned. It certainly needs to be seriously curtailed. I mean, this is, when you take, for example, older people or vulnerable people, or people already squeezed to the hilt, living from paycheck to paycheck. I mean, these people have nothing more to give. And to think that the AI companies or any grocery store or any airline or even hotels, all of these people would be using your data to create a personalised profile, so you could be ripped off for everybody. I mean, it is absolutely outrageous in the extreme. And there should be a global, this is obviously a global phenomenon. It's not unique to America. It can't be. It's a global, we're in a globalised age now. So this is a very serious, I think, interference with privacy, but also a desperate way of ripping off people who particularly those in the squeeze middle, as I call us, who have given everything and feel we're getting nothing back for all our hard-earned work in return. It just seems to be paying more and more to big corporations, and all kinds of corporations. We're just like renters. We're just like renters, and we're becoming more and more renters rather than owners. So I think this needs to be seriously addressed, by public policymakers and the government. I mean, democratic governments should not turn their peoples, the ordinary people, into renters of everything. This should not happen, and it should not be allowed to happen. And if it is happening, there is a very serious problem with alleged vested interests having too much power over government and public policy. And this has to stop. And I feel myself, perhaps constitutional review needs to take place in order for this to stop, this AI surveillance. But of course, it's very difficult, as you know. My own situation, is impossible to find anyone to support
support my own constitutional case, and I had to do all the work. It was extremely difficult work over months and months and months to try and understand what happened, and it was sort of like figuring out a really difficult mathematical problem or theorem almost. I had to produce a theorem, a law theorem, for like a legal theorem in inverted commas, to understand what happened. But I mean, it is in my opinion, it's a bit of a piece of ingenious, a brilliant theorem which I never expected I would be able to, prove. So it's a difficult thing. A theorem in law is different to a theorem in mathematics, but there's a lot of overlap. There's a huge amount of overlap, and constitutional law is very, it's very mathematical. It's a difficult kind of logic, a different logic, but there's a lot of similarities. It's very rigorous. It's very dense. I suppose there's density there. There's density. I suppose being an algebraist, it's not too much of a jump to constitutional law, because algebra is all about structure, and then bringing time into constitutional law. That's incredible, and incredible insight. But that took a long time to spot it, to try and get the right language in order to talk about constitutional time as a variable in constitutional law. I mean, that took months and months and months of refinement over and over again, and thinking, and revision, and constant revision and review, and that sort of thing. So I'm really happy with this paper, and a lot of people are reading my paper on abuse of power, all kinds of abuses of power everywhere. So there's a huge amount of interest in my work on abuse of power. So this is very interesting. So as well, that my work on abuse of power in all kinds of different situations seems to be resonating with people all around the world, which means that they must be exposed to the same dynamics. So they're global problems of abuse of power, and hopefully in time people will be able to stand up to the people that are abusing them. And I won't say I was abused in the presidential nomination process, but we weren't treated very well. Those of us who went around to we were treated, like dirt, by the county councils. That's how we felt treated. So we were, because of the direction of a certain party, not to but it was military precision the way it was done. It was like military precision. I mean, how did it transpire to be executed with such military? Who was behind it? And this is what I'd like to know. Who was behind the direction of the Fine Gael leadership to not to nominate, or to block anybody from to block all independent candidates, including myself. I was just one of the candidates, but I happened to last the longest, one of the longest. I suffered the most humiliation, and then I actually took the courageous step of doing a judicial review, something I never did before. So that in itself was a huge challenge. 81 plus edits, and then treated it really badly. But the sequence of things that happened, when I look back, I had to kind of then sort of say from where I was and look back at all of the things that happened. It took months and months and months to get the sequence right, and then to see the way that the whole window of opportunity narrowed, and then the way that constitutional review essentially failed, and the separation of powers failed in this particular case. So, and it's very serious when it comes to a presidential election, that the separation of powers failed because of the consequences for all those who had lost opportunity. We had that opportunity cost, didn't we, from the KPMG report, didn't we? And that was all, wasn't that all changed? Opportunity cost was reduced. Well, certainly, I've studied economics in the past, and opportunity cost is something I understand. So what would be the cost? What would the opportunity cost of somebody missing out on being a candidate in the presidential election, particularly in a case if the nomination was found to be defective? I mean, it's an interesting question, but that's not a question for me to answer at the moment. So I'm delighted with my research on constitutional law, and particularly my theorem on introducing time into constitutional law. I don't think a lawyer actually could have done it. It would have to be a mathematician, because mathematicians bring time into a lot of things, and it would have to be somebody with a mathematical mind. I think that would have been, and I assume the lawyers probably, or the elite lawyers, would take umbrage to a mathematician